I was already dead when she pointed at me. At least, that's what it felt like, the roar of the alien Colosseum pressing in on my skull, the stink of sweat and ozone, the heat of too many eyes searing my skin. Prisoner, spoil of war, human exhibit. That's all I was supposed to be, another piece of debris from Earth's little war with the Empire. And yet, in the cathedral-sized hall of living metal, under its shifting walls that pulsed faintly as though the whole place were breathing, the alien queen raised one elegant hand and declared, in front of thousands, that I was her chosen reward. At first, I thought she was joking. She had that kind of presence, serene, unblinking, terrifyingly beautiful, the kind of woman who could say, execute him, or fetch me tea, with the same unshakable calm. Surely she didn't mean me. I was dirty, half-starved, chained at the wrists, and barely upright. Someone behind me even laughed, a cruel snort that echoed in the chamber like a crack of thunder. The queen's amber eyes flicked toward the offender, and the laughter died. My heart pounded. The silence that followed was worse. The nobles stared. The generals whispered, their silver armor buzzing faintly with embedded circuits. And then the crowd began to murmur like a hive of bees. A human. I was already dead when she pointed at me. At least, that's what it felt like, the roar of the alien Colosseum pressing in on my skull, the stink of sweat and ozone, the heat of too many eyes searing my skin. Prisoner, spoil of war, human exhibit. That's all I was supposed to be, another piece of debris from Earth's little war with the Empire. And yet, in the cathedral-sized hall of living metal, under its shifting walls that pulsed faintly as though the whole place were breathing, the alien queen raised one elegant hand and declared, in front of thousands, that I was her chosen reward. At first, I thought she was joking. She had that kind of presence, serene, unblinking, terrifyingly beautiful, the kind of woman who could say, execute him, or fetch me tea, with the same unshakable calm. Surely she didn't mean me. I was dirty, half-starved, chained at the wrists, and barely upright. Someone behind me even laughed, a cruel snort that echoed in the chamber like a crack of thunder. The queen's amber eyes flicked toward the offender, and the laughter died. My heart pounded. The silence that followed was worse. The nobles stared. The generals whispered, their silver armor buzzing faintly with embedded circuits. And then the crowd began to murmur like a hive of bees. A human. That human. I caught snippets in the alien tongue, words I had only half learned, but the tone was clear enough. Shock. Outrage. Disbelief. Me. I wasn't doing much better. My brilliant response to being chosen as a personal prize was to mutter, are you sure you don't want the guy next to me? He looks way less breakable. The guard on my left smacked me in the ribs with the butt of his rifle. I folded, wheezing, but not before hearing a sound that stopped my breath. The queen laughed. It wasn't loud, just a ripple of music across the edges of her lips, but it carried. The great Colosseum swallowed the sound and amplified it until the stone itself seemed to tremble with her amusement. The murmurs stuttered into silence. Even the living walls quieted, as though the structure itself bent an ear. Then she stood. Her gown shifted like liquid obsidian, clinging to the tall form of a woman who could have passed for human if not for the ears, long, tapering, almost blade-like, catching the strange light that poured from the ceiling as though the stars themselves had been bottled there. She moved like a storm-given flesh. Every step echoed with the authority of someone who had never been told no in her life. And she walked straight toward me. I tried to look anywhere else, her crown of fractal metal, the guards flanking her, the faint shimmer of anti-gravity drones buzzing near the roof, but those eyes pulled me back. They weren't human. Too deep, too steady, burning with something I couldn't name. The queen stopped a breath away. My own breath tried to crawl back down my throat. She reached out, fingers pale and slim, tipped with nails that caught the glow of a dozen starlights, and touched the iron collar at my throat. It hissed, unsealing, and clattered to the floor. The crowd erupted. Shouts, screams, outrage layered over disbelief. I swear I heard someone in the back cry, "This is madness," which felt like overkill, but fine, I agreed with them. Her voice rose above them all, a low, resonant tone that carried like a blade through fog. "This one is mine." The chains fell. Now, here's the thing, when an alien queen declares ownership of you, you'd think you'd be terrified. I was. Absolutely. My knees wobbled, my stomach turned, and every instinct screamed at me to run, except there was nowhere to go except into the arms of several plasma-armed guards who looked like they'd snap me in half just for fun. But another part of me, the part that had survived occupation, prison camps, and too many alien meals involving tentacles, couldn't resist. I leaned toward her, just enough so only she could hear, and muttered, "You know, where I'm from, people usually start with dinner and a movie." For the second time in 5 minutes, the alien queen laughed. And if the crowd hadn't already hated me, that sealed it. She gestured, and the guard seized me, not roughly, but firmly, like I was suddenly valuable cargo. My chains were gone, but I wasn't free. No, I was something worse, chosen. As they dragged me toward a set of towering doors that shimmered with shifting light, I caught one last glimpse of the arena. The nobles' faces twisted with disgust. The generals whispered furiously. The common crowd, some of them stared with wide, curious eyes, like maybe this insane moment had cracked something open they hadn't expected. The doors swallowed us. Darkness gave way to corridors of crystalline stone, humming faintly with energy, veins of light tracing alien glyphs along the walls. The air itself buzzed with the faint taste of static. Every sense told me I'd just crossed into someplace I wasn't supposed to survive. And yet, when she walked beside me, tall, calm, radiating a gravity all her own, she glanced my way and smiled, just slightly, as if to say, "Yes. I chose you. Let them wonder why." Which was great for her. Me. I was still trying not to throw up. I whispered, "So, what's the return policy on this arrangement?" She didn't answer. Her silence was worse than any response, because it left me alone with one certainty, pounding louder than my heart. Whatever game she was playing, whatever purpose I served, it wasn't survival. It was something stranger. And I wasn't sure if I was the reward, or the test. The chamber they dragged me into did not belong to a conqueror. It wasn't dripping with gold or carved skulls of defeated enemies. Instead, it looked like someone had hollowed out a star and decided to live inside the glowing core. The walls shimmered with shifting constellations that moved too slowly to be illusions, like windows into skies I'd never seen. The air hummed with a low vibration that made the hair on my arms stand on end. I had the unpleasant feeling that if I sneezed too hard, the entire room would rearrange itself out of sheer annoyance. The guards left me standing in the middle, unshackled but not unobserved, while she walked ahead with the same calm stride she had in the arena. She stopped at a crystalline table that unfolded out of the floor like liquid glass. Fruit, or what I guessed was fruit, bloomed across its surface, glowing faintly, pulsing like they had heartbeats of their own. She plucked one, bit into it, and then, without looking at me, said, "Eat." I stared. Just so we're clear, this isn't one of those situations where the fruit explodes my stomach from the inside, right? Because I've had that dream. Twice. Her head tilted, long ears catching the shifting starlight. You distrust a gift. I distrust anything that glows. Back home, glowing things usually mean radiation, toxic waste, or my neighbor's car stereo. For the first time, her lips curved, almost imperceptibly. She plucked another piece and held it out. A guard stepped forward, glaring as if daring me to refuse. The queen's hand remained steady. Against every instinct screaming at me to keep my mouth shut, I reached out and took it. The fruit was warm, soft like a peach but with the surface tension of jelly. I bit into it cautiously. Sweetness flooded my mouth, sharp, electric, alive. It tasted like a dozen flavors at once: apple, honey, citrus, and something that reminded me of ozone before a thunderstorm. I blinked, stunned, then swallowed. Well, I said, licking juice from my lips. If this kills me, at least it'll be the tastiest execution I've had so far. Her amber eyes flicked to me. You speak as if death amuses you. Lady, at this point Death and I are on a first-name basis. We send each other Christmas cards. Honestly, he's overdue for a visit. The guard behind me made a sound halfway between a snarl and a cough, but the Queen raised one elegant hand and silenced him. The room seemed to shift subtly, the constellations on the walls sliding, realigning, forming a pattern I couldn't quite decipher. I wondered if the chamber itself was listening, translating us into stars. Why? She asked suddenly. Why what? Why would I choose you? Oh, I've been asking myself that since about 2 minutes before I passed out in front of several thousand screaming aliens. I spread my hands. Maybe you needed a court jester. Or a very fragile paperweight. Or someone to test your glowing produce before you eat it. Her lips curved again. A smile this time, faint but unmistakable. You are not afraid to mock me. Oh, no, I'm terrified, I said quickly. Mockery is just my coping mechanism. Some people scream, some cry, I make bad jokes until everyone's uncomfortable. It's a gift. That earned a sound from her, soft but unmistakable, a laugh. Quieter than in the arena, warmer, like the kind of laugh someone gives when they aren't being watched. The guards shifted uncomfortably. I got the sense they weren't used to hearing it. Before I could decide if that was a good or bad thing, the table rippled again, plates of translucent crystal rising from its surface, filled with dishes that seemed half food, half chemical experiment. Something steaming, something fizzing, something that looked disturbingly like a bowl of jellyfish. Sit, she commanded. A chair unfolded behind me, organic and strange, as if it had grown there in an instant. I sat cautiously, bracing for tentacles. None appeared. She sat across from me, perfectly composed, like this was a normal dinner date and not, whatever this was. I poked at a fizzing cube. So, just to clarify. You kidnapped me, declared me your prize, and now we're having dinner. Do you aliens have speed dating, or is this the royal version? Her eyes narrowed slightly, though not in anger. More like she was examining me the way one examines a curious insect. You survived captivity. You survived battle. You survive now. I would see why. Well, spoiler alert, I said, lifting a fizzing cube and sniffing it. It smelled like carbonated lemons and burnt sugar. It's 90% dumb luck and 10% stubbornness. I'm not really hero material. I popped it in my mouth. The cube dissolved instantly into a flood of bubbles that rushed up my sinuses. I sneezed violently, then coughed. And apparently I'm allergic to alien jello. Her laugh came sharper this time, like crystal breaking. The guards froze, clearly uncertain whether this was acceptable, but she waved them away. One by one, they left, until the chamber was only her and me. The silence after their departure was heavier. The walls still hummed, the stars still shifted, but now it felt like all that energy pressed closer, listening. She leaned forward. You hide fear beneath words. You think I do not see. I'd be disappointed if you didn't. Hiding fear is about the only hobby I've got left. Her gaze lingered, intense, unblinking. I tried to hold it, failed, looked away. For a terrifying moment I wondered if she would peel me open with a thought, see every corner of my mind. Then she said, almost softly, perhaps fear is not your weakness. Glad to hear it, I muttered. Because I've got plenty of other weaknesses we can catalog instead. Laziness, bad knees, no singing voice, take your pick. Her smile lingered a moment longer before fading. She rose, gown whispering across the crystal floor, and moved toward a doorway that seemed to open at her presence alone. I stayed seated, trying not to look like a rabbit abandoned in a wolf's den. She glanced back at me once before leaving. Eat. Rest. Tomorrow, you begin. And just like that, she was gone. I stared at the food, the glowing fruit, the shifting constellations. Alone, in a chamber that might have been alive, with a queen who thought I was worth something I couldn't understand. I picked up another fizzing cube. Begin what? I asked the room. The room didn't answer. But the stars on the walls shifted again, aligning into a shape that looked disturbingly like a pair of eyes watching me. I said. If this is breakfast, I'd rather stick to the glowing fruit, thanks. Neither replied. They moved with the eerie silence of people who had never once tripped over their own feet in their lives, which already made me distrust them. The one with the tray set it on the crystal table and gestured at me. The instruments glowed faintly, buzzing in tones that reminded me of dental drills. Whoa, time out, I said, backing up. Whatever spa treatment you've got planned, I should warn you I have very sensitive skin. And a strong phobia of alien tools that look like they belong in a torture museum. The masked one tilted its head, and the buzzing instruments rearranged themselves into neat lines, like obedient soldiers. The other attendant unfurled the exosuit, sleek, black, flexible like liquid armor. Definitely not pajamas. Is this clothing? I asked cautiously. The bird-masked head inclined once. Great. Cool. Love it. But you don't have anything in, say, casual human prisoner chic. This looks like I'm about to audition for Space Batman. They waited. Silent. Implacable. I sighed. Fine. But if this thing fuses to my skin and turns me into a bioweapon, I'm haunting everyone in this palace. The suit was surprisingly easy to put on, clinging like water that decided to become fabric. It adjusted itself, seams melting shut, until it fit perfectly. Too perfectly. I flexed an arm, and faint blue lines of light traced down my muscles. I flexed again. The lines pulsed in response, like veins of energy. Oh, I muttered. Oh no. I've seen enough bad sci-fi to know this is either a gift or a death sentence. The attendants stepped back. One pressed a hand to the wall, which rippled and dissolved into a corridor. Without a word, they motioned for me to follow. I did, because, well, the alternative was staying in a room that might start rearranging my atoms out of boredom. The palace. Or ship, or whatever hybrid monstrosity it was, stretched endlessly, hallways bending at angles that didn't obey Earth geometry. Sometimes I swore we looped back to the same corridor, only for the walls to shift again, proving me wrong. The air was heavy with ozone and the faint scent of metal rain. Finally, we entered a vast chamber. This one wasn't private. Rows of nobles and generals stood in balconies carved into the walls, their robes glittering like frozen waterfalls. Their eyes, cold and curious, all locked on me. At the center of the chamber, raised high on a dais of crystalline steps, stood the queen. Her gown shimmered differently now, white threaded with silver, alive with faint energy fields. The crown on her head pulsed like it was connected directly to the room's power. Her voice carried across the chamber, calm but cutting. Behold what I have chosen. A murmur swept the balconies. I heard my new title whispered in the alien tongue. It wasn't flattering. Something between toy and mistake. I swallowed, feeling about as significant as a bug under a magnifying glass. The queen gestured, and the attendants shoved me forward. I stumbled into the circle of light at the chamber's center. Immediately, beams of energy scanned me from all angles, sweeping across my body. The suit responded, glowing brighter in tandem, feeding the beams back into the chamber. A holographic display flickered above me, filled with symbols I couldn't read. The crowd gasped. Some in awe, more in disgust. I did the only thing I could think of, I raised my hand awkwardly and said, "Hi." I'm the prize. Please don't bid on me. There's a strict no-return policy. The chamber went dead silent. Then, impossibly, the queen smiled. Just faintly, but enough that every noble froze like prey animals sensing a predator. One general in gleaming silver armor stepped forward, voice sharp as static. My queen, this is madness. A human, dressed in our living weave? He is fragile. Unworthy. An insult to the honor of the empire. I raised a hand again. Honestly, I agree with Shiny Guy. Fragile, unworthy, insulting, that's basically my Tinder profile. A ripple of horrified whispers swept the chamber. The general's face twisted. You mock us? I mock everyone, I said before my brain could stop my mouth. Equal opportunity mockery. The queen's laugh rang out, clear and deliberate. The chamber shook with its echo. She raised one hand, silencing the uproar. Her gaze burned into me, unflinching. He is mine, she declared. And through him, you will see what you cannot yet imagine. The crowd erupted again, louder this time, torn between outrage and confusion. I stood there glowing faintly in my alien bodysuit, trying not to faint. And in the back of my mind, a single thought whispered with terrible clarity. Whatever she had planned for me, it wasn't just dinner and glowing fruit anymore. The corridors never ended. That was my first impression as the queen's attendants guided me along paths that twisted like veins through a body too vast to comprehend. Sometimes the walls shone like polished metal, other times they were translucent, giving glimpses into chambers filled with alien machines that pulsed with quiet power. At one point I swore I saw a star floating inside a containment sphere, burning silently while technicians and exosuits harvested its light as if it were nothing more than a houseplant. I should have been terrified. And I was. But terror has a way of numbing you after a while, so my brain did what it always did under pressure, it went looking for jokes. So, I whispered to the nearest attendant, who of course ignored me, do you guys charge rent for all these hallways? Or is the palace just compensating for something? No reply. Just the faint hiss of air that wasn't quite air moving through vents that weren't quite vents. Eventually, we reached a vast set of doors. They folded open, not swinging but blooming, like a flower deciding to show its face to the sun. The chamber beyond was alive with sound, voices, machinery, the hum of a city crammed into one enormous room. It wasn't a throne room this time. It was a marketplace, though nothing like the ones I remembered from Earth. Stalls hung suspended in midair, anchored by threads of light. Vendors with too many arms or too few shouted in musical languages. Creatures with shimmering hides swam through the air as though water had been stitched into the air itself. Towers of translucent material stretched high, covered in alien glyphs advertising goods I couldn't pronounce, let alone buy. The queen moved beside me, no longer flanked by guards, her presence commanding enough to part the crowd like a blade through silk. The nobles followed at a respectful distance, but their whispers chased me like gnats. I leaned toward her. So, just to check, are we shopping? Or is this the part where I'm auctioned off again? She didn't answer immediately. Her amber gaze swept across the bustling market, taking in the colors, the chaos, the hum of lives lived in service to her empire. Finally she said, you will see. Great, I muttered. That's always reassuring. We stopped at a stall where a vendor displayed an array of crystalline spheres, each glowing faintly from within. They floated above the counter, turning slowly in the air. I squinted. Each one contained a tiny, perfect landscape, a desert storm frozen mid-gale, a forest with trees bending in impossible directions, a sea full of bioluminescent waves. They're souvenirs. I guessed. The queen shook her head. Memories. My eyebrows shot up. Like, bottled memories. The vendor reached out, plucked one, and held it before me. The sphere cracked open like an egg, light spilling across my vision. Suddenly I wasn't in the market anymore. I was standing on the deck of a ship, alien stars wheeling above me, wind ripping through my hair. A voice I didn't know shouted triumph, and the air smelled of salt and ozone. I blinked, and the memory snapped shut, pulling me back to the stall. I staggered, clutching my head. Okay. That was something. Like VR on steroids. With a hangover attached. The Queen watched me closely, unreadable. You see how fragile your mind is. Thanks, I said, rubbing my temples. Always nice to get a performance review before breakfast. The vendor chattered something to her, bowing deeply. She answered with a curt gesture. Then we moved on, deeper into the chaos. Everywhere we went, eyes followed. Some wide with curiosity, others narrowed with contempt. A few children, at least, I assumed they were children, though they had 3 sets of eyes and floated slightly off the ground, pointed at me and laughed. I bowed theatrically, which only made their guardians hiss and pull them away. Not exactly the warmest reception, I said. They do not yet understand, the Queen replied. Neither do I. And I'm, the guy in the middle of it all. That earned me a glance, sharp enough to pin me in place. But she didn't answer, just kept walking until we reached the far side of the chamber, where the marketplace gave way to a balcony overlooking the heart of the city. And what a city it was! Imagine New York if someone had taken the skyline, twisted it into spirals, and then launched it into orbit around a star that wasn't quite a star. Towers curved impossibly, defying gravity, suspended by beams of light that shifted like tides. Bridges stretched between them, glowing threads where crowds of beings moved like ants across webs. Ships the size of mountains glided through the air, docking at platforms that unfolded like flowers to receive them. I grabbed the balcony rail, half for balance, half because if I didn't hold on to something I might float away just from the sheer scale of it. Wow, I breathed. It's like Blade Runner and Disneyland had a baby and then fed it nothing but steroids. The Queen didn't smile, but I thought her lips twitched. This, she said, gesturing at the endless sprawl, is why they doubt. They believe strength comes only from their machines, their fleets, their control. They cannot imagine another way. And what, I'm supposed to be their imagination coach? Her gaze slid to me, steady, unreadable. Perhaps. I laughed nervously. No offense, but I'm barely qualified to coach Little League, let alone an interstellar empire. You survived, she said simply. That is enough. I wanted to argue, but the city below stole my words. It was alive in ways I couldn't comprehend, a machine and a creature and a civilization all fused together. And me? I was the joke standing on its balcony, trying not to pass out from vertigo. Okay, I said finally. But if I'm your big inspirational figure, I want a cape. At least give me that much. She didn't answer. But this time, I thought I saw it, the faintest flicker of amusement in her eyes, gone as quickly as it appeared. Behind us, the nobles muttered, their whispers sharp and bitter. And I couldn't help thinking that whatever game she was playing, dragging me through her empire like some strange mascot, it was ruffling feathers in ways I didn't understand. Which, knowing my luck, meant things were about to get much, much worse. It started with the lights. 1 second the banquet hall shimmered with golden radiance from its living chandeliers, casting elegant shadows across 100 nobles in their glittering robes. The next second, darkness swallowed everything. Not dimness, total, suffocating black, as though someone had snuffed out the star the palace orbited. 100 voices gasped at once. I had just been mid-bite of some alien delicacy that looked like a snail and tasted like bubblegum, so naturally my first words were, is this part of the entertainment? The answer came in the form of a sound, sharp, metallic, wrong. Something slicing the air. Then a crash. Then a scream. The lights flared back, but fractured. They flickered in shards of red and green, failing to stabilize, throwing the room into jagged chaos. Nobles scrambled from their seats. Guards activated their weapons, plasma lances and particle shields glowing like shards of a broken aurora. At the center of the chaos stood the queen. She hadn't moved from her seat. Her amber eyes gleamed, calm in the madness. A shadow loomed behind her, fast, too fast, then something blurred past me, slicing toward her throat. I didn't think. My body moved before my brain caught up. I shoved forward, grabbed the nearest object, which happened to be a chair, and swung it like a baseball bat. The chair connected with the assassin's arm in a satisfying crack. The blade missed her by inches. The assassin hissed, cloaked in a suit that rippled like oil on water. The chair disintegrated in my hands under the heat of his weapon, leaving me with nothing but splinters. Great, I muttered. My finest weapon, destroyed in battle. Chair sword, you will be remembered. The queen rose then, faster than thought. Her gown rippled into armor, segments snapping into place as though her very clothing had decided to become a fortress. She raised one hand, and a surge of golden light blasted the assassin backward into a column. The crowd erupted into shrieks. But there wasn't just one assassin. 3 more emerged from the fractured shadows, blades like condensed darkness in their hands. The guards engaged, but their movements were sluggish compared to the assassins, who moved like creatures unbound by gravity. One guard fell with his chest split open. Another screamed as her weapon shorted under a blade swipe. And me? I was still standing in the middle of the chaos, chair fragments in hand. This is fine, I told myself. I'm fine. Just another dinner party, totally normal. The queen leapt into the fight, a blur of silver and gold. Her movements were too sharp, too precise, like she wasn't constrained by joints or bones. She caught one assassin's blade with her bare hand, the armor glowing where it touched, and twisted. The attacker crumpled like paper. The nobles were stampeding now, trampling one another to reach the exits. I dodged between them, looking for something, anything, I could use besides broken furniture. My eyes landed on a plasma lance dropped by a fallen guard. I grabbed it. The weapon hummed in my grip, warm, alive, like it didn't trust me. I had no idea how to turn it on, but I did what any rational human would do, I pressed the glowing button. The lance erupted in a beam of shimmering blue light that nearly burned my eyebrows off. Okay. I shouted. Got it. Totally meant to do that. One assassin lunged toward me, blade raised. I swung the lance wildly. By sheer dumb luck, the beam connected with his weapon, destabilizing it. The blade flickered, shrieked like a dying animal, and then exploded in his hands, sending him sprawling. I blinked at the smoldering wreck. Ha! Beginner's luck. Or advanced stupidity. Either way, I'll take it. The queen dispatched another assassin with a blast of energy from her palm, then turned just in time to see me holding the lance like an idiot. Her expression, was that amusement? Or disbelief? Hard to tell mid-battle. The last assassin screamed something guttural and charged her. Before I could react, the queen raised both hands and unleashed a wave of golden energy that rippled through the hall. The assassin dissolved into ash mid-step, leaving only the echo of his cry. Silence followed. Shattered furniture, scorched marble, fallen guards, and the stench of ozone filled the air. The nobles cowered in corners, pale and trembling. And me? I was still holding the lance, panting, my arms trembling from adrenaline. Then, because my brain is wired all wrong, I broke the silence by saying, "So, does this mean dessert is cancelled?" The queen laughed. A short, sharp laugh, but laughter nonetheless. The nobles looked scandalized. The surviving guard stared at me like I had sprouted another head. She stepped toward me, armor retracting back into flowing fabric. "You saved me." I blinked. I think the chair did most of the work, honestly. May it rest in peace. Her gaze sharpened, but the corners of her mouth curved. The weapon of the weak became stronger than blades of shadow. They will speak of this. Oh God, I muttered. Please don't tell anyone I want to fight with a chair. I'll never live it down. But she ignored me, raising her voice for the chamber. This human has proven loyalty. With his hands, he defended his queen. With his courage, he shed blood beside ours. He is no longer prisoner. Gasps swept the hall. Her eyes locked on mine. He is consort. I dropped the lance. It clattered against the floor, humming indignantly. Wait. Hold on. Consort. As in, me. Consort, me. The nobles erupted in outrage. The word ricocheted through the chamber like a weapon. A dozen voices protested, screamed, cursed. One fainted outright. I stood frozen in the middle of it all, staring at her. My brain stuttered like an old computer. Consort, I repeated weakly. Does this come with dental benefits? The queen laughed again, louder this time, and the sound rang like a victory bell. They gave me a crown. Not a real one, not the kind dripping with jewels and intimidation, but a thin circlet of living metal that coiled around my head like it wasn't sure whether to stay or slither away. It hummed faintly, syncing with my pulse, which did wonders for my nerves. The first time it vibrated in time with my heartbeat, I nearly ripped it off. But when I asked the queen if it was normal, she only said, "It knows you," which was not reassuring in the slightest. Life as consort, still couldn't say that word without choking on it, turned out to be less glamorous and more like surviving an endless series of job interviews with people who wanted me dead. Every corridor I walked down, I felt eyes drilling into me. Nobles bowed to the queen, ignored me, then whispered sharp, venomous words just loud enough for me to know I was the punchline. Guards who once shoved me around now saluted, but their salutes had all the warmth of a man shaking hands with his ex-wife's divorce lawyer. The queen, of course, remained unbothered. She carried herself with the same impossible calm, whether she was addressing her council or examining strange glowing plants in her private gardens. Somehow she expected me to accompany her everywhere. Not in chains now, not even under guard, just beside her, as if I belonged there. One evening, she led me into those gardens. They weren't gardens the way Earth understood them. Trees with crystalline leaves sang in ultrasonic tones. Pools rippled with liquid light instead of water. A flower as tall as a tower opened and closed rhythmically, exhaling a mist that smelled faintly like cinnamon. I trailed after her, staring in open awe, then muttered, "You know, back home, gardens have weeds, squirrels, and the occasional neighbor's cat. Here. It looks like Dr. Seuss ate a chemistry set." Her lips curved slightly. "This place listens. It is alive." "Of course it is," I sighed. "Why wouldn't it be? God forbid I ever sit somewhere that doesn't have opinions about me." She stopped by one of the pools, amber eyes reflecting the liquid glow. "You mock because you fear." I opened my mouth to deny it, then shut it again. She wasn't wrong. Fear was the default setting I'd been running on since the war started. Instead, I crouched by the pool, dipped a finger in the glowing liquid, and yelped when it sparked against my skin like static. Ow. Okay, note to self, don't touch alien puddles. Her laughter, soft but real, drifted across the garden. We sat there for a while, silence stretching between us, broken only by the hum of the living plants. For once, I didn't feel like prey. Just tired. Finally, I asked the question that had been gnawing at me. Why me? Out of all the warriors, treasures, whatever, you picked a half-starved human prisoner. Why? Her gaze lingered on me, steady, unreadable. Because you did not bow. I blinked. That's it. I didn't bow. You kidnapped me because I have bad manners. You laughed in the face of death, she said. You mocked power. Even now, you mock me. None of my kind would dare. That is why. I rubbed my temples. Great. So sarcasm is my superpower. That'll look fantastic on the comic book cover. But she was serious, I could tell. And as much as I wanted to brush it off, part of me understood. Her world was made of obedience, ritual, and fear. Maybe what she saw in me wasn't strength but a kind of recklessness that her people couldn't imagine. Still, the idea of being admired for my terrible sense of humor was almost too much to process. The peace didn't last. A messenger stormed into the gardens, armor humming with urgency. He dropped to one knee and rattled off a report in their tongue. I caught a few words I'd learned: fleet, rebellion, fire. The Queen's jaw tightened. She dismissed him with a sharp gesture, then rose. "What's happening?" I asked, standing. "Revolt in the outer colonies," she said. "Ships burn. They test my reign." My stomach dropped. "That sounds bad." "It is expected," she replied coolly. "They will be crushed." Crushed. The word stuck in my throat. "That's your plan? No negotiation?" "No." Her eyes snapped to me, sharp as blades. "They defy the Empire. And maybe they're defying it because I hesitated, because pointing out flaws in an alien empire wasn't exactly safe, not great. Oppressive? Kind of murdery. The silence that followed could have frozen the garden mid-breath. Her expression didn't change, but I felt the weight of her gaze press against me. I swallowed hard. "Look, I'm not saying I've got the answers. But if your only tool is a hammer, everything starts to look like a nail. And right now, your whole empire looks like one big, angry nail." Her amber eyes searched mine. For a terrifying moment I thought she might order my execution on the spot. Then, to my shock, her lips curved. Not a full smile, but something close. "You speak as if you are not afraid." "Oh, I'm terrified," I admitted. "But fear's boring. Sarcasm's more fun." She laughed then, sudden and sharp, startling the messenger still kneeling nearby. The sound echoed across the living trees like a bell. And just like that, the weight lifted. For the first time, I wondered if maybe, just maybe, my role wasn't to survive her world but to change it. Which, of course, terrified me even more. The first time I stepped onto a starship not as a prisoner but as consort, I expected at least a little dignity. Maybe a red carpet, or a band playing something dramatic, or at minimum, a chair that didn't collapse under me. Instead, I got strapped into a seat by two grumpy guards who looked like they'd rather be strapping me to a torpedo. The harness kept tightening as though it suspected I was plotting something. By the time it finished cinching, I was pretty sure my lungs were filing a complaint. The Queen, of course, floated into her seat like she had personally invented gravity. Her armor whispered into existence over her shoulders, plates clicking together with elegance that made me feel like I was wearing a garbage bag. She turned her head toward me, and I tried to look dignified while wheezing for air. Is it supposed to feel like I'm being hugged by a giant robot python? I croaked. Her ears flicked slightly, which I'd learned meant she was amused. It ensures survival if the ship is struck. Survival? Lady, if this thing squeezes any tighter, the only thing surviving will be my belt buckle. A low chuckle escaped her, just loud enough for the guards to hear. Their expressions didn't change, but I swear one of them twitched in what might have been suppressed laughter. I considered that a victory. The ship itself was alive, or at least that's what it felt like. The walls pulsed faintly, veins of light running through them, and when the engines engaged, the whole craft shivered like a beast waking from slumber. I'd ridden in human shuttles before, metal coffins that rattled and groaned, but this was different. The starship purred. It liked flying. Through the viewport, space unfolded, endless and glittering. Stars smeared into lines as the ship folded itself into something faster than light. I would have been awestruck if my stomach hadn't been trying to escape through my throat. Don't throw up, I told myself aloud. The Queen glanced at me. Your body resists the fold. My body resists everything, I said through clenched teeth. Exercise, healthy food, early mornings, apparently interstellar travel too. Her lips curved, but her gaze sharpened. Endure. We approach rebellion. Right. The rebellion. My brilliant idea of telling the all-powerful alien queen that maybe mass murder wasn't the best policy had earned me a front-row seat to a civil war. I really needed to learn when to shut up. When we dropped out of fold space, the viewport filled with chaos. A fleet sprawled before us, ships of the Queen's empire, sleek and gold, clashing with jagged black craft that spat fire and lightning. Explosions bloomed like terrible flowers. Debris spun silently across the void. I whispered, "Oh no. Oh no, no, no." The Queen rose, armor gleaming brighter as the ship connected her to its systems. They defy the throne. Or maybe, I muttered, they just don't like paying whatever galactic taxes you've got going on. Her eyes flicked to me, sharp as a blade. You would defend traitors? I'm just saying, I said quickly, raising my hands. On my planet, we had a little thing called revolution. And usually it wasn't because people were thrilled with how things were going. Spoiler, we didn't like kings much. Her gaze lingered, unreadable. Then she turned back to the battle, issuing commands in her tongue. The ship responded instantly, tendrils of light spreading like veins as weapons aligned. I sat uselessly in my death hug harness, watching entire ships explode in silence. Great. I always wanted a front row seat to the apocalypse. Then, unexpectedly, the Queen pointed toward the viewport. One ship resists the fold of destruction. Their leader seeks parley. Sure enough, a black vessel pulled back from the fight, signaling in pulses of light. My stomach sank. Parley? With us? As in, me too. She glanced at me, and I got my answer without words. Moments later, we were aboard the rebel flagship. Its corridors were darker, sharper, built for function, not grandeur. The rebels themselves looked leaner, hungrier, eyes burning with fury rather than fear. They led us into a chamber where their commander waited. He was tall, scarred, and radiated the kind of authority that made you want to straighten your spine. When his gaze fell on me, though, confusion flickered. This, he said in accented common, is the consort. Yes, the Queen replied, voice like steel. Chosen before all. The commander studied me, then burst out laughing. Not cruelly, just incredulously. A human. This is the prize you claim. I spread my hands. Hey, buddy, don't knock it till you try it. I come with sarcasm, back pain, and a near magical ability to spill drinks on myself. The Queen's ears twitched again, betraying her amusement. The commander's laughter softened, though bitterness lingered beneath it. Perhaps, he said slowly, this human sees what you do not. Perhaps that is why you keep him. Their eyes locked, tension sparking between them like static before a storm. And me? I stood there wondering how I'd become the world's worst marriage counselor between an alien queen and a rebel warlord. Somehow, I knew the words I spoke next might shape the fate of more than just myself. And I was really hoping I wouldn't blurt out a joke about dental plans again. I should have known it would come down to a room full of angry people shouting in languages I barely understood, with me standing in the middle like some kind of cosmic referee. The Queen on one side, regal and sharp as a blade, the rebel commander on the other, scarred and burning with conviction, and me, the human prize no one could figure out why she picked. If I had a business card, it would read, Professional Awkward Silence Enthusiast. The chamber thrummed with energy, the walls of the rebel ship alive with some kind of biomechanical nervous system. Every pulse of light along the veins seemed to echo the mood of the room, red, agitated, impatient. The Queen and the commander spoke back and forth in clipped, furious tones, and every now and then one of them would gesture toward me like I was Exhibit A in a cosmic trial. I caught words I half recognized: loyalty, chains, blood, future. Nothing comforting. Finally, the commander switched to common, his voice low and raw. Your empire suffocates. You do not see, because all bow. But his scarred hand jabbed toward me, he speaks. Even mocked you before your court. You did not kill him. The queen's amber eyes slid to me. He does not fear. Correction, I said quickly, holding up my hands. I'm terrified literally all the time. I just hide it under sarcasm. It's a survival mechanism. Like a possum pretending to be dead, except louder and more annoying. A ripple of laughter broke out among the rebels. Even the commander's lips twitched. The queen tilted her head, studying me as though I were some puzzle box only she could solve. And that's when it hit me. Maybe this was why she chose me. Not because I was strong or noble or secretly packing Jedi powers, but because I was too busy cracking jokes to bow. I was the one thing her empire didn't know how to control: unpredictability. I swallowed hard, heart hammering, and said the words before I could stop myself. Maybe you're both right. The rebels are angry because they're being crushed. You're furious because they defy you. But if the only choices are choke or burn, you're all going to die. And me? I'm tired of being caught between people who only know how to break things. The chamber went quiet. Very, very quiet. My inner voice screamed, "Great job, idiot. Now they'll kill you first to solve the problem." But the queen didn't strike me down. Instead, she spoke, softly, dangerously, "Then what do you propose?" I froze. 1,000 half-formed thoughts ran through my head: peace treaties, joint councils, democracy with a capital D. But all I actually managed was, maybe try not killing each other for 5 minutes. See how it feels. The commander barked a laugh. This human. He speaks madness. Madness that may save us, the queen murmured. What followed was the strangest negotiation in galactic history. Me, the human, stumbling through clumsy suggestions while the queen and commander clashed with words sharper than knives. The rebels wanted freedom. The queen wanted loyalty. I wanted not to die in a fiery explosion. Somehow, impossibly, we found a sliver of middle ground. The colonies would gain a measure of self-rule. The empire would remain intact but loosen its grip. And, as part of the deal, the queen's reward, that would be me, would serve as a bridge between them, a living reminder of the absurdity that had brought both sides to the table. No pressure. When it was done, the rebel commander clasped my arm, his grip bruising but almost respectful. Human, he said, you are either a fool or the universe's trick. Why not both? I grinned weakly. He actually smiled. Back on the Queen's flagship, the war was already shifting. Messages rippled through the fleet, battles halting, ships peeling back into fold space to carry news of the accord. It wasn't peace, not yet, but it wasn't fire and death either. That was enough. In the quiet that followed, I found myself with the Queen in her strange crystalline gardens again. The singing trees whispered around us. The glowing pools pulsed faintly. For once, the silence between us wasn't heavy, it felt possible. You changed me, she said finally, her voice soft enough that the garden itself seemed to lean closer. I laughed, nervous and a little choked. Yeah, well, you changed me too. I used to think surviving was enough. Turns out, maybe living means something more than that. Her eyes held mine, amber fire in the dim light. Then, impossibly, she reached out and touched my hand. Just lightly. Enough to remind me that somehow, in this insane tangle of war and sarcasm and cosmic politics, we'd found something unexpected. Do you regret being chosen? She asked. I thought about the chains, the fear, the battles, the way her people looked at me like a joke, the way I'd felt so small under stars that didn't care if I lived or died. And then I thought about laughter in impossible gardens, about rebels who listened because of my stupid jokes, about a queen who saw something in me when no one else ever had. "No," I said. "Not anymore." Her ears flicked, and a small, rare smile curved her lips. For the first time in what felt like forever, I wasn't just surviving. I was part of something bigger, messy, fragile, absurd, but real. And if the universe wanted to laugh at that, well, let it laugh. I'd laugh louder.